Hey there everyone, it's Jamie and today I'm going to be doing a review on Captain America Civil War. So let's jump straight in. Just a warning, there are going to be major spoilers here. I'm going to be telling you all the parts of the film that I thought were really good and all the parts that I thought were a little bit less good. My thoughts on this film are very mixed. It's a good film, but I don't think it has a purpose, like a real strong place in the whole overarching Marvel Cinematic Universe. For me, the reason why the film is most interesting, like having the superheroes fight one another and be at odds with one another, is actually the film's greatest downfall. What happens is that Marvel has opened up this can of worms, and unlike with Winter Soldier where they were able to kind of do something with that can of worms and then help that further their plot, I just don't feel like this specific plot really is going to enhance the storytelling in any way. It's a story that works really well on a comic book, but whether that can translate into film, I'm not sure it's done its job. However, with that grievance aside, most of the film is very well structured and very entertaining. The first battle we get treated to with Wanda, Captain America, Falcon and Black Widow is a really nice way to get back into a Captain America film. I think Captain America films are the ones that we get the best kind of action scenes in. It's not so much flying and fighting, that kind of stuff, it's hand-to-hand combat, and it's interesting to be able to see people that are more, let's say, everyday kind of getting down to business. However, that said, I feel like the film wasted the potential of the Crossbones character. He was there for 10 minutes and then, well, dead. And I don't know, for some reason I think that the Crossbones plot would have been far more interesting than the Baron Zemo plot that we got treated to throughout the film. So straight after that battle we get put into the room with all of the superheroes, so being Iron Man, War Machine, Black Widow, to name a few, and Captain America obviously. And we kind of get the first real confrontation, and it was nice to actually be able to get both sides of the argument. I feel like in the comic book of Civil War, I think the reason why I was most attracted to being on Captain America's side was because that bill that they had in the comic books was more about demasking them, so they had to give up their identities and had to be known to the public, which obviously is not like a smart or safe thing to do, and we know the backstories of like 1,000,001 superheroes who lose loved ones to villains because they find out their identities. Whereas the film took it a bit more of a political approach to it, as just saying we want to be able to control the Avengers, where they go and how much damage they can cause, and it's all about accountability. So on that sense I was kind of like, okay, am I leaning towards Iron Man? Maybe a little bit. We wrap that scene up and unfortunately we find out that Peggy Carter has passed away, thankfully very peacefully in her sleep, and we are taken to the funeral of Peggy. And I really enjoyed Sharon Carter's little speech about who Peggy was and what she stood for, and I think the rhetoric of what was happening to Steve Rogers in that moment, and being reminded of Peggy, who always stood for her values and did the right thing even if everybody was telling her it was the wrong thing. I think that was a really nice scene. A really lovely other fight scene that was in there was Steve and Bucky's like little fight to get away from the authorities when they were trying to capture him after they thought that he had blown up the UN. That was really well choreographed, and all that stuff, especially when Black Panther joins in and they're doing the car, like, I think that was honestly probably one of my favourite fight scenes in the entire movie. Now, the arguably biggest fight, or most important fight of the entire film, was Avengers versus Avengers. Now prior to this, the little scenes, the team-ups and getting to meet Spider-Man and bringing in Ant-Man and all that kind of stuff, they were really well done. I did enjoy that. There's a lot of nice comedic moments in there to enjoy. However, the fight itself Bits and pieces worked really nicely. I liked the inclusion of Spider-Man in there for the first maybe 5 minutes. Funny how he's talking and he's being very much the comic book Spider-Man that we know. But aside from kind of Spider-Man's inclusion in there and maybe Ant-Man becoming giant, the fight really did nothing for me. And I think that might be because they spoiled the fight in the trailers. So pretty much in every trailer they've been promoting since, you know, they started announcing this film, they've shown that cut of Rhodey in the grass and Tony over him with like the smoking War Machine suit. So when that happened, I don't think the emotional impact was as strong as it could have been. I don't think they should have been showing that in trailers. That should have come more as a surprise. I feel like reading the big Avengers versus Avengers fight in the comic book was a bit more meaningful, because I didn't feel like they were holding back as much, whereas in this it was very like, I'm punching you, but I'm only like punching you half force. And our final battle with Tony, Bucky and Steve as well, this kind of ties into my very first thoughts of the film, of that I don't think it knew where to go. Like it posed this question of what happens when superheroes go against one another, but I don't think it was able to answer that. And I know that maybe it's not even a possibility to answer that. Once, you know, they've kind of had this fight, where do you go from now? Maybe that is the question. But I feel like the way that they wrapped up the fight and the way that it was carried out, it just, again, it's different to when you have your main character actually fight like a villain, and then there is that threat of death. There is that threat of serious injury. It lowers the stakes a lot more without a villain to be there in the fight. But my review is not all doom and gloom. There's definitely some really hilarious moments in the film. I pretty much loved most of the Wanda and Vision scenes. The first scene when Captain America is consoling her after the whole blowing up a building incident. Vision just kind of walks through a wall and she's like, we talked about this, you know, you got to use the doors. And he's like, well, the door was open, so I just assumed it meant I could come in anyway. It was nice. It's nice kind of seeing them try to make Vision a normal person, like by wearing clothes and everything, but he's still so much out of it. Although, on the topic of romances, we do have Steve and Sharon, which was a nice little inclusion there. I did like that. One of my favourite scenes of the film is when she goes to meet Steve with their little getaway vehicles, and they have a little talk and then they kiss or whatever. Prior to this, Bucky and Falcon are sitting in the car just like bantering. They like hate one another. Bucky's like, can you move a seat forward? And just Falcon's like, no. Them being at one another, and then as soon as, you know, Sharon and Steve kiss, they're just like sitting there like little teenagers who are just like, like with the little happy smirks on their face. That was a good scene. Pretty much enjoyed all of the Falcon Bucky banter of the film. Those two, I know like they say they hate each other, but I would like a buddy cop film about that. So that's about it for my review. I did enjoy the movie, although I'm still a little bit uncertain about its existence in the first place. But coming from the source material that it had, it did a pretty good job at answering a very impossible question. So yeah, let me know what you thought of the films, your favourite scenes, your most hated scenes, in the comment section below, and I will see you next time. Bye!